Lowe's knows to bring your vision to life, it's important to find the right color. That's why MyLowe's Rewards members get a free Valspar paint or exterior stain sample to test your look to confidently refresh your space. Offer valid in-store only 8/7 to 8/20. Limit 1 per customer while supplies last. Discount taken in time of purchase. See associate for details. Rewards program subject to terms and conditions. Details at lowes.com/terms. Subject to change.
Time for Michigan's newest sports talk show, Mitten Madness.
And here he goes. Defense win championship.
Michigan sports talk from here in Battle Creek. The latest stories, the biggest games, all across the Mitten State.
That's not something to play with.
Streaming live and on demand on the 95.3 WBCK app. Your host, Da'Jzon Hughes.
Good morning on this Saturday morning. This is another episode of Mitten Madness on 95.3 WBCK. I am your host, Da'Jzon Hughes, and we're about to talk all things Michigan sports for the next hour. Coming up this week, plenty of news to dive into. Obviously, we're going to touch on our Detroit Tigers, where they stand in the MLB, what things are looking like in the AL playoff race as that starts to come to a full picture as we get ready to step into the end of August and the beginning of September. And we're going to talk about Michigan as they finally have gotten word from the NCAA on what their consequences are going to be. We're also going to talk the Lions, their preseason, and, what we should be expecting going into the regular season. And then we're going to talk into the Pistons schedule as that was fully released from the NBA this week as well, before getting into our picks to close out the show. As always, I'm doing absolutely fantastic. It's going to be a fantastic weekend. It's a great Friday as I'm recording this and actually getting to record on Friday since I will actually be here. I'm just happy as a Michigan fan, which we'll dive into much later, but I'm a happy Michigan fan today rather than one that could definitely be upset. Lacrosse is on a bye week this week before playoffs start next week, so I got some time to vibe out and enjoy myself as well. It's time for us to just get into everything we got going on, starting with the Tigers and the MLB. As always, we'll do our obligatory rundown of the standings across the MLB. We'll start in the National League again, this time in the West. The Padres have jumped the Dodgers. Padres are 69-52 at the top of the NL West. Dodgers just one game behind at 68-53. Diamondbacks making a comeback, 60-62, 9.5 games back from the Padres after they jumped Giants for third in that division. The NL East, the Phillies, what up, boys? They're at the top, 69-52 on the year. 64-57, 5 games behind them are the New York Mets. The Miami Marlins come in 11 games behind the Phillies at 58-63. The NL Central, the Brewers are still holding the crown at 76-54. They're currently the best team in all of baseball. Chicago Cubs, 68-52, 8 games behind them. And the Reds trudging along, 13 games behind the Brewers at 64-58. Jumping up into the American League, we'll start in the East because that's where we always love to be. The Detroit Tigers at the top, 71-52, 6.5 games behind are still the Guardians at 63-57. The Kansas City Royals come in 10 games behind the Tigers at 60-51. 57-64, 13 games behind the Tigers are the Minnesota Twins. And we know who sits at the bottom of the division, the team that just gave us a run for our money. So maybe I should be a little more calm about that. The Chicago White Sox, 44-77 on the year, 26 games behind our beloved Tigers. In the AL West, the Houston Astros, 68-53 at the top of their division. The Seattle Mariners, 1.5 games behind them at 67-55. Meanwhile, at a perfect 500, 61-61, 7.5 games behind the Astros are the Texas Rangers. And in the AL East, the Toronto Blue Jays, 71-51 at the top of that division. Boston Red Sox, 5 games behind them at 66-56, and 64-57, 6.5 games behind the Blue Jays are the New York Yankees. So when we look at overall standings in the entire MLB. The Milwaukee Brewers have a comfortable lead on everyone as they are 6 games above the Toronto Blue Jays and 6.5 games above our Tigers. Tigers are third in all of baseball with their 71-52 record, only a half game behind the Blue Jays. And then just one full game behind the Tigers are both the Padres and Phillies to round out the top 5. Well, technically they're tied for 4th place at 69-52, and then a half game behind them in 5th place are the Chicago Cubs. Looking at the wild card and expanded standings, the AL wild card right now, the Seattle Mariners, the Boston Red Sox, and the New York Yankees all have a spot in the playoffs. The Guardians are a half game away from snagging a spot from someone, and the Texas Rangers 3.5 games back, while the Royals are 4. In the NL, the Cubs and the Dodgers, along with the Mets, all have spots. Meanwhile, the Reds, a half game behind the Mets, and the Cardinals are 3.5 games behind the Mets for that last wild card spot. At the moment, the Detroit Tigers are sitting second in the AL, once again a half game behind the Blue Jays, so they're very close to getting that 1 seed back. They're on a current 2-game win streak, 6-4 in their last 10. They have a 98.6% chance of making the playoffs. The only team currently better is the Brewers, who have a 99.9%, above a 99.9% chance. They're on a 12-game win streak, and they won their last 10 in a row. So, well, technically their last 12. So we see why they're in that position. They have a plus 159 score differential on the year. The Cubs plus 115. Our Tigers are doing well at plus 77. Just got to continue to win games. Speaking of games, I think it's time to talk about what happened over the last couple of days. The Tigers were able to come out 2-1 against the White Sox. If you ask me, it should have been a sweep. But, I mean, that's coming off another series win. We talked about it coming out of the loss to the Twins, that they needed to start to rack up series wins again because they had been losing a couple in a row recently. Well, they come out, beat the Angels 6-5 in Game 1, lost 7-4 in Game 2. They then beat the Angels 9-5 in Game 3. Then we play the White Sox, which, I mean, we all know the White Sox have not been the greatest baseball team this year. In fact, they've been in the bottom 3 teams of the MLB all season long. We squeeze out a 2-1 victory in Game 1, then lose 9-6 in Game 2 to the White Sox, and then a 1-0 win in Game 3 to give them the series win. They're currently in the middle of a series with the Twins, which they were able to win Game 1 on Thursday 4-3. Game 2 is Friday night. Obviously, I'm recording this now, 8:10 p.m. And then obviously you have Games 3 and 4 on Saturday and Sunday. Their next upcoming matchups could be a little interesting. They have the Houston Astros. The Houston Astros have been a thorn in the side of the Detroit Tigers for, I mean, the last couple of years. Honestly, if we look earlier this year, the Tigers lost a 3-game series to the Houston Astros 2-1, 8-5 loss, 6-4 loss, 7-4 win. That was back in April at the beginning of the year, and this is their chance to get some redemption as they're in the second half of the season. Coming up for the Tigers, we won't talk too much about this Astros series because we're going to talk about it for our picks later in the show. The first game going to be Monday on MLB Network, 6:40 first pitch, Flaherty against Arrieta. Tuesday, 6:40 p.m. on TBS, Skubal versus Brown. That's going to be a matchup. And Wednesday, 1:10 p.m. first pitch on MLB Network, Morton versus Valdez. And then following that up, the weekend series next week for the Tigers is a divisional series. It's a home series for them against the Kansas City Royals, 7:10 first pitch on Friday, 6:10 first pitch on Saturday. and 1:40 first pitch on Sunday. In that series, you'll get Mize against Berger. You'll get Paddock against Wacha and Flaherty against Lugo before we get to see Skubal again on Monday against the A's. This Tigers team is really starting to put it together again. Like I said, they're coming off of 2 series wins. They're hoping to get a 3rd series win as they won the first game in extras 4-3 in 11 off of a sac fly. If they're able to win that series and the next 2, you can almost lock them into the playoffs. Granted, there are some tough series coming up throughout the rest of the year. Those 2 series that I just mentioned are the next 2, but then you have the A's and the Royals again to close out August. Then in September, they'll play the Mets and then the White Sox before taking on the Yankees. So you got the White Sox sandwiched between the 2 New York squads. You got the Marlins before playing Cleveland twice, and sandwiched in between Cleveland are the Atlanta Braves, and then you close out the season, the end of September, against the Boston Red Sox. Almost none of those series are easy to win. If we want to be honest here, the Marlins should be a little bit easier for the Tigers to win. The Chicago White Sox hopefully is another series win, and then also the Oakland Athletics. Is that where they still play? I think so. They are still struggling as well, but outside of that, a lot of these series are in the hands of who decides to show up and play the best. So the Tigers are more than in for it. But before we get into all of the football happenings that are going to be going on, we got to talk about our stat leaders. Riley Green, triple crown on the batting side, 269 on the ERA, a .317 OBP, .512 on that slugging percentage, 28 home runs and 89 runs batted in. Meanwhile, pitching, we know that triple crown still belongs to Skubal. 2.42 ERA with 11 wins and 190 strikeouts on the year. We're going to be back after the break talking Michigan football and Lions with more Mitten Madness on 95.3 WBCK. Welcome back into Mitten Madness on 95.3 WBCK. I'm Da'Jzon Hughes, and Michigan fans, Michigan haters, Michigan State fans, Ohio State fans, and any other college football fan in the world, buckle up, because we're about to go on a little road trip to talk about what is happening with Michigan football based upon the NCAA. Their Committee on Infractions ruled on University of Michigan's advanced scouting case on Friday, with the school getting a significant fine, including the loss of 2 years of postseason football revenue, but avoiding punitive penalties like a postseason ban. The NCAA has also ruled an additional game suspension for head coach Sharon Moore. He was expected to serve a 2-game suspension in the upcoming season, which they reported in May that the school proposed to self-impose. The NCAA COI has levied an 8-year show cause penalty for Connor Stallions, a 10-year show cause penalty for former coach Jim Harbaugh, who's now coaching in the NFL. The size of the fine is expected to be considerable, although a finite amount will not be available. While there's variables on how much teams will get from football postseason revenue, sources expect that number based on past Big Ten revenues and projections to be more than $20 million, perhaps more than even $25 million. Some of that will depend on both Michigan's performance and the Big Ten's performance. Michigan and his coaches/staffs were charged with 6 level 1 violations in the case, which are the most serious. The decision to fine the school heavily and not utilize the penalty like a postseason ban is indicative of the shift in NCAA enforcement rulings away from postseason bans. The significant punishment that Stallions, who masterminded the advanced scouting scheme, is a show cause, essentially acts as an employment ban. Any punishments for Harbaugh aren't likely to matter, as he is now back in the NFL coaching. He received a 4-year show cause penalty back in 2024 in a different NCAA case, which is essentially an employment ban in major college football through the 2028 season. The draft of The notice of the allegations, Stallings is found to have arranged the illegal scouting of at least 13 Michigan future opponents on at least 58 occasions between 2021 and 2023. He resigned in October of 2023 when the scheme was uncovered and became the biggest story in all of sports for weeks to come. But, I mean, for the 2 games that Michigan have self-imposed, Moore will begin the suspension after the game at Oklahoma, which is September 6th. There's a distinction in the Moore separation compared to the ones that Harbaugh served to open and close 2023, one which came from the NCAA and other from the Big Ten. In those suspensions, Harbaugh coached the team during the week in practice. But because of the NCAA rule change in January 24, Moore will not be able to coach and practice for the game weeks of the suspension. The rule expanded the expansion for the coaches to include all athletics activities between contests rather than just the contests themselves. It does not look like they're going to say which game it is that he will be choosing to sit out, but it is going to be an additional 1-game suspension. The chance looms that he could appeal the additional 1 game from the NCAA as they open their season against Western Michigan, a game expected to be played overseas. We're going to find out more about, which game he eventually will sit out. But for now, we just know that Michigan isn't really facing the hammer that everybody thought they were going to get. No postseason bans, so they're going to be able to play in the national or the college football playoff or national championship, wherever they end up. They can play in any bowl game that they end up in. None of their former wins have been vacated. The championship is still theirs, and, there's no asterisk next to it anymore. That is just simply a championship, a national championship for the Michigan Wolverines in football. There's no asterisk next to it anymore. The NCAA did their investigation. The Big Ten did their investigation. All of the proper consequences were handed down. So now the conversation can be over. It was an unfortunate thing. Even as a Michigan fan, I wish that this wasn't the case. But at the same time, like we've said 1,000 times before, everybody's doing it. Everybody's stealing signs. Everybody's sending people to games. Michigan just so happened to get caught. So now the NCAA is trying to make an example out of them. That's fine. It's normal. They didn't strip any wins. They didn't strip the championship. They didn't give a postseason ban. Just got to cough up a little bit of money. You know who doesn't care about money? The University of Michigan. They have so much money. Their alumni base is insanely large. So I'm sure alumni are just going to give money back into the pockets of the University of Michigan. One of those tax write-offs they get to use at the end of the year. Why wouldn't they? I think Michigan's going to be just fine this year. And this set them up to have continued success for years, especially in the recruiting realm, because there are no postseason bans. Getting a postseason ban, not having a chance to win a national championship, not having a chance to play in significant bowl games hurts your recruiting chances. Just ask Penn State, who had the death penalty at one point. Ask Texas, who had the death penalty at one point. It hurts. It's hard to be successful when you have zero chances of doing things in the postseason. Michigan avoids that major, major hit, and I think they're going to be just fine because of it. Obviously, the college football season's only around the corner, so we're going to be talking much more about Michigan, Michigan State, and the rest of the college football landscape as the season goes on, especially because Michigan ain't missing the playoffs. They're just going to be missing their head coach for a few games, which will be interesting topics when the season rolls around. The Detroit Lions, on the other hand, had their last postseason game cut short after a horrific injury. Detroit Lions safety Maurice Norris is back with the team after he entered concussion protocol. He had a scary injury in that preseason game against Atlanta. It was a horrifying scene at the beginning of the fourth quarter. He was carted off the field and put in an ambulance. His head snapped back as he went down while attempting to tackle Falcons running back Nathan Carter. The officiating crew announced that the game was suspended after Campbell and Atlanta coach Raheem Morris decided not to finish the contest. Players from both teams joined hands in unison to show support for Norris as he received medical attention on the field. Raheem and I agreed that what we were going to do, we talked to NFL official Sean Hochuli, who let us know that the game was still on, and we communicated with each other. Campbell said, we told Deshaun we'd be taking knees, and he said, I understand. That's the way it went, and the game was called. After the injury, Norris was transported to the Grady Memorial Hospital in Atlanta for observation, and he returned to stable condition while regaining feeling and movement in all his extremities. 2 days later, he returned to the Lions practice facility with teammates after sharing that he was good via social media while thanking everyone for their support. Obviously, Coach Dan Campbell was extremely happy to see him back, as he said it was a breath of fresh air and everybody was fired up, as that's hard when something like that happens. You just don't know. I can't tell you the number of times I've seen guys with concussions knocked out, and I've had them myself. But when you have these and you don't know, you know they're breathing, but you don't know anything else and they're gone, it's a little different because they're trying to block that out, but yet it's still there. So that makes it a little more difficult, and that's why it's out of the norm. I mean, that's just tough all around. You know, you never want your preseason game to turn out that way, but it did. So the important part is Kyle Allen has looked great. Craig Reynolds has been a fantastic running back for the Lions in this time. You win one, you lose one, right? So now it's just up to that third game, which is going to be this weekend, later today, actually, 1 p.m. Miami Dolphins are traveling up to Ford Field. The Dolphins are a 2.5-point favorite in this preseason game. They got Zach Wilson at quarterback, Ollie Gordon the second, taking their running back runs. I would imagine that for both of these teams, their starters are going to get some run in this game. Maybe a quarter, maybe a half, not a ton. There's an opportunity for the Lions to be wildly successful in this third preseason game. The Dolphins, this is only their second game of the preseason, and the Lions have one more preseason game coming up against the Texans later this year. They had the lucky chance to be able to play in the Hall of Fame game against the Chargers. The Dolphins tied the Chicago Bears 24-24 in their first preseason game. So it'll be interesting to see how these two teams clash when they step on the field at Ford Field later this weekend. And then you look at, you know, what's coming up next week in preseason week 3. That game is going to be another 1 p.m. game. That's going to be on Saturday the 23rd as well. This one also at Ford Field. So 2 straight home games for your Lions going into the preseason. I do expect the starters to get a little more run in this the fourth preseason game, which is technically the third as well for them, as they continue to get prepared for that regular season. We won't know a ton about this Lions team until maybe this weekend, depending on if those starters get out, but then definitely next weekend when the starters are for sure going to play in that last postseason game, getting a few runs in before week 1 of the season starts. C.J. Gardner-Johnson is now left and is a part of the Texans. Sam Laporta's questionable. Tyler Decker's questionable. Ahmad Hassanin is questionable as well. The injuries will be the big thing for the Lions this year. I think we know that their starters are going to be their starters. There are tons of weapons for the Detroit Lions, but their big question marks are, how healthy are they going to be? How good will Aiden Hutchinson be coming back from injury? And what is their coaching staff going to be like? They have 2 new coordinators in the building after both of their offense and defensive coordinators left last year for better jobs, Aaron Glenn and Ben Johnson. Aaron Glenn and Ben Johnson. That's going to be the big question mark, is can the new coordinators still come in and have this team as successful as it has been the past couple of years, or will the new schemes completely throw things out of whack? We'll find out over the next couple of weeks. But we're going to get ready to talk about the Pistons schedule and what to expect in the NBA here in Detroit when we get back from the break on 95.3 WBCK.
Detroit sports fans, Wolverines and Spartans alike, this is your sports show, Mitten Madness, with Jacob Harrison and Da'Jzon Hughes on 95.3 WBCK.
Welcome back into Mitten Madness here on 95.3 WBCK. It's time for us to talk about the Detroit Pistons as their entire schedule was released over the last week. They're opening up the season with a dreaded foe, the Chicago Bulls, on the road. So they're going to have to go over to the United Center on Wednesday, October 22nd to take on the Bulls at 8 p.m. Then they get Cleveland on the 27th for their fourth game of the year. They're going to be playing Saturday, November 1st. Both of those games are going to be on Peacock. Their Saturday, November 1st game is against the Dallas Mavericks, except this game is going to be played in Mexico City. So it will be a neutral site game for both of those teams. The day before Thanksgiving, they play Boston on ESPN. The day after Thanksgiving, Black Friday, they play the Orlando Magic. They also have a couple of national televised games on Peacock against the Washington Wizards on November 10th and the Atlanta Hawks on November 18th. They have another game against the New York Knicks on January 5th. Shout out to the Noops for Peacock. Another game on NBC and Peacock January 19th against the Boston Celtics. Prime Video for the Houston Astros on January 23rd and the New York Knicks on February 6th, along with the New York Knicks on February 19th. San Antonio on February 23rd on Peacock. They'll also play the Cavaliers on ESPN on February 27th. The 76ers Thursday, March 12th on Prime Video. The Atlanta Hawks on ESPN on Wednesday, March 25th. Monday, March 30th, they'll take on the Oklahoma City Thunder on Peacock. And their last nationally televised game, Wednesday, April 8th, against the Milwaukee Bucks on ESPN. That's how you know the Detroit Pistons are back. They're playing nationally televised games on a regular. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16 nationally televised games. And if you take away the Prime Video, which I understand may not necessarily be considered nationally televised, you still 12 nationally televised games for the Detroit Pistons. I don't know the last time the Detroit Pistons were playing this many national televised games in a season. But it kind of makes sense when you look at how good they were last year. Ended up getting the 6th seed in the East. And they took the New York Knicks to the brink in all 6 games of that first round playoff series. Why wouldn't you want to put them on national television? They're all young, too. Right? The oldest person playing on this roster, like as far as like getting significant play time, is Tobias Harris. Granted, Tobias Harris has been in the league for quite some time now. He's had multiple stints with the Detroit Pistons now, but he's still not like this savvy old vet. Like, you know, when you think of veterans on vet minimums, Tobias Harris isn't the guy that comes to mind. But then you look at the rest of this team: Jalen Duren, Cade Cunningham, Jay Nivey, Marcus Sasser, Asur Thompson, Ron Holland II. Team's young, dog. And they're only going to continue to get younger as they continue to bring in more pieces that fit what this team is trying to do. The schedule is going to be fun this year. Obviously, we have no clue how it's going to play out, even in the slightest, because so much can happen. Just over 2 months before this thing kicks off. What sucks is that they don't play on any of the significant holidays. They don't play on Christmas. They don't play on New Year's Eve, but they do play on New Year's Day against the Miami Heat. That's going to be a home game in Detroit as well. I think the bigger thing is you just want to see improvement from the Detroit Pistons. We'll take a look at their roster, who they're expecting to be on the team and where. Okay, so looking at the depth chart right now, starters are Cade Cunningham, Tim Hardaway Jr., Asur Thompson, Tobias Harris, Jalen Duren. Second squad, you got Dennis Schroeder. Obviously no longer Malik Beasley, so maybe Marcus Sasser. But this is so hard to tell because this is based off last year's depth chart, and there have been so many moves with the current roster. Malik Beasley's still listed, but I do not believe that he's going to play for the Pistons at all this year. Cade Cunningham, obviously Jalen Duren, Tobias Harris, Ron Holland, Jay Nivey, Dennis Jenkins, Bobby Klitman, Paul Reed, Marcus Sasser, Tolu Smith, Isaiah Stewart, and Asor Thompson. Karis LeVert, Duncan Robinson, Chaz Lanier are all new additions who are expected to make the roster, expected to make the rotation, expected to play. There's only so many people who can play. So the bigger thing is actually figuring out who's going to be on the game day roster, who's going to be in the depth chart, where they fall in the rotation. We can safely say Cade Cunningham, Jalen Duren, Tobias Harris, Ron Holland all have a spot. I would imagine Jay Nivey has a spot coming back from injury. I believe Marcus Sasser has a spot. Isaiah Stewart, Asor Thompson all have spots. So, we're already at 7 or 8 guys. Not saying all those guys are in the rotation, but all those guys have a spot on the roster. You're only leaving so many spots left for everyone else to get in on. There's only maybe 1 or 2 rotation spots left. And I would have to imagine that both of those rotation spots are going to Karis LeVert and Duncan Robinson, who have both played significant minutes in the NBA. Duncan Robinson is an NBA champion. Karis LeVert has played alongside some of the best players in NBA history, Kyrie Irving, James Harden, Kevin Durant, right? And now he's going to get an opportunity to play against some of the younger, play with some of the younger guys and help them build into the team that they want to be. I don't see really any real concerns for the Pistons heading into the year other than remaining healthy and now playing at that same level that you were just playing at. The Pistons were playing at an unreal level last year, and they're going to have to continue to play at that level. When you look at their schedule, they're running into a lot of scenarios where they're playing playoff teams back-to-back. Houston, Boston, Cleveland, all playoff teams this past season. Right? Indiana, another playoff team. Milwaukee, Indiana, Boston, all playoff teams. Orlando almost made the playoffs, so you can throw them in there too. Right? When you look in their first 5 to 6 games, they play 4 or 5 playoff teams in a row. And they do that multiple times throughout the year. For example, Indiana, then you take a break with Atlanta, but then you play Milwaukee, Indiana, Boston, Orlando, Miami. Atlanta again, then Milwaukee. All of those are basically playoff teams. So you're going to have to play at an extremely high level because you're running into playoff teams week in and week out. Every other game, every game, consistently in a row, you're running into playoff teams. That's got to be scary. But then again, when you're young, you have the bodies, you have the mindset. There's no reason why you shouldn't be able to compete. No reason why you shouldn't be able to, hang with some of these teams and prove that you're ready to take a step forward. I think the Pistons are ready to take a step forward. But there's only one way to find out if they will. Looks like the Pistons are going after free agent forward Javonte Green, who they have signed, finalized a 1-year deal with the Pistons. He split last season between the Pelicans and Cavaliers, averaging 5.1 points and 3.2 rebounds in 68 combined games. 6'5" Green figures to add a defensive-minded presence to a Detroit wing rotation that includes Asor Thompson, Jay Nivey, Duncan Robinson, Karis LeVert, and Ron Holland II. He's appeared in 263 games over 6 seasons with the Pelicans, Cavs, Bulls, and Celtics. We'll find out more about the Pistons and what they're going to do this season as the weeks go on. But now we're going to get ready to get into our picks when we come back from the break with more Mitten Madness on 95.3 WBCK.
95.3 WBCK.
Welcome back to Mitten Madness here on 95.3 WBCK. It's time for the picks. Last week was one of those weird weeks where I accidentally did that thing and picked a game that I can't really have the results to until next week, as the Twin Series doesn't wrap up until this Sunday. So I won't be able to add that one. But I went 3-2 last week, bumped me up to 49-28. And we got 6 more lined up for this weekend. We're going to start with the early week. Last week, took down the Lynx over the Liberty, Dream over the Mercury, and Ursik over Osborne. Dolodice did lose to Hernandez, and the Valkyrie absolutely smacked the Sparks around. So that's what gives me 3-2 from last week. This week, plenty of WNBA to talk about. We're going to get back into the octagon. But, of course, we are going to start on the diamond, the one that is right here in Michigan. The Detroit Tigers playing in Comerica Park this weekend, or next week, against the Houston Astros, 8-18, 8-19, and 8-20. The Tigers are 39-24 when they're playing at Comerica Park, 71-52 on the year. Meanwhile, the Astros having a pretty solid season themselves, 68-53, 31-28 while they're on the road. Jose Altuve is their leading home run smasher with 21 on the year. Jeremy Pena leads the batting average scenario, 318 on the average, 373 OBP, 492 slugging. Christian Walker has their most RBIs with 65. Meanwhile, on the pitching side, Hunter Brown leads both their strikeouts and ERA, 245 for the ERA and 164 on the strikeouts. Framber Valdez has 11 wins on the year to lead the Astros. ESPN giving the Tigers a 58% chance to win game 1, as the Tigers are 4-1 in their last 5, while the Astros are 3-2. That game 1 will be between Spencer Arguetti and Jack Flaherty. Arguetti 1-3, 6.38 ERA and just 18 innings pitched, 16 hits with 16 strikeouts, 2 home runs, and 11 walks. Flaherty, 6-12 on the year, 4.76 ERA and 124 innings pitched, 114 hits, 153 strikeouts, and 20 home runs on 49 walks. Game 2 of this series sees the Houston Astros put Hunter Brown on the mound. He's 10-5 on the year, 2.45 ERA, and 143 innings pitched, 100 hits with 164 strikeouts, 12 home runs given up on 43 walks. Meanwhile, Skubal 11-3 on the year, 2.42 ERA, 0.87 WHIP, in 152 innings. He's got 110 hits on 190 strikeouts, just 23 walks, while he's only given up 13 home runs. They're giving the Tigers a whopping 60.3% chance to come out with a victory in this game with their ace on the mound. That's another 6:40 first pitch on Tuesday the 19th. And lastly, Wednesday the 20th, the Houston Astros have a 56.6% chance to win this game in comparison to the Tigers' 43.4%, as Framber Valdez will take on Charlie Morton. Valdez 11-5 with a 2.97 ERA, 145 innings pitched with 120 hits, 145 strikeouts, just 8 home runs given up on 49 walks. Meanwhile, Mr. Morton for the Tigers, 7-10, 5.48 ERA. He's got 111 innings pitched this year, 121 hits given up, 117 strikeouts on 50 walks, and 18 homers given to the other guys. Even with this third game looking like it will not go in the Tigers' fashion, I like that the ace is on the mound in game 2 with a significant advantage, and the Tigers have an advantage in game 1. Maybe if they go 2-0 in the first 2, they might just will themselves to a 3-0 sweep, but nonetheless, 2 is enough to win the series, and I'm going to take the Tigers to win this series over the Houston Astros. Was not an easy decision, but was a decision nonetheless. That's going to get us over onto the hardwood. The New York Liberty are visiting the Minnesota Lynx at the Target Center. The Lynx are a whopping 16-1 at the Target Center. They lost their first game at home just a few weeks ago. That game was against the Atlanta Dream. They lost by 4, 90-86. It's the first time they've lost at home all year. So, I don't think this is even going to be a competition, but nonetheless, still got to talk about it. The Liberty have a 38.8% chance to win. Meanwhile, They're giving the Lynx a 61.2% chance to win. The Lynx are 2.5-point favorites, and they're negative 135 on the money line. Although Nafisa Collier is still out, the best player for the Lynx, out for the Liberty, Nayara Sabali, Brianna Stewart, and Isabel Harrison. The Lynx are 2-0 in this series, and they're 16-1 at home. I'm going with trends because trends most of the time tell the story. This story is that the Lynx are better than the Liberty with or without Nafisa Collier. We'll find out, as the Lynx are 5-0 in their last 5 games. The Liberty are 3-2. Lynx are 9-1 in their last 10. That one loss was to the Dream by 4. Meanwhile, the Liberty 4-6. Minnesota Lynx are 27-5 on the year compared to 21-12 for the Liberty. While the Liberty are still the second best team in the Eastern Conference, the Lynx are the best team in not only the Western Conference, but the entire WNBA. That doesn't change. The Lynx win this game over the Liberty. Next game is going to take us out west on the 17th, 8:30 p.m. on NBA TV. The Atlanta Dream, 21-11, currently holding that one spot in the Eastern Conference, taking on the Golden State Valkyries, who are 17-15. They're 10-5 at home, and they're currently in the 4th spot in the Western Conference. The Dream are 11-7 on the road. The Dream have a 66.2% chance to go into the Chase Center and come out with a victory compared to just a 33.8% chance for a home win for the Valkyries. Jordan Canada out for the Dream. Kayla Thornton out for the Valkyrie. Valkyrie are 3-2 in their last 5. Dream are 5-0. They're 8-2 in their last 10. They're on a 6-game win streak. Both these teams are on a win streak. Both these teams have split. The Dream won the home game. Valkyries won on the road. Can the Valkyries win one of these games at home? This is tough. They are playing much better at home, but the Dream have been on an absolute run recently, and I don't know that I can pick the Golden State Valkyries to take down the best team in the East and one that has been playing very good basketball of recent. I'm going to stick with the Atlanta Dream here over the Valkyries, although that could be a very good game. It's going to be much closer than I think some people anticipate. Our next game, also still in that WNBA hardwood, one of the most even games we'll see across the board. Phoenix Mercury, 19-12 on the year, 8-7. Meanwhile, the Seattle Storm are 16-17, 8-9. Or excuse me, this is not as even as our next game, but it's still pretty even. 8-9 at home for the Seattle Storm. A 35.5% chance for the Mercury to win this game. Meanwhile, a 64.5% chance for the Storm. This game is at Climate Pledge Arena in Seattle on the 17th at 6 p.m. The Mercury, 1 game 1. The Storm, 1 game 2. The Storm, 1 game 3. But all of those were in May and June. It's now August, and when you look at how things have gone recently for Seattle, they're on a 6-game losing streak. They've lost their last 5 in a row. They're 2-8 in their last 10. Meanwhile, the Mercury are 3-2 in their last 5. They're 4-6 in their last 10. They are on a 1-game losing streak. The Mercury are not having any injuries. Katie Lou Samuelson has been a huge loss for Seattle in this time and is a big part of the reason why they're on a losing streak. Phoenix, who's second in the conference, going against Seattle, who's 5th in the conference. Seattle looking to hold on to a playoff spot, looking to try and drag their way up. Phoenix just trying to keep pace with the Lynx, who are far and away ahead of everybody else. I'm going to go with the Mercury here, although ESPN says I shouldn't. Something about these trends and these numbers tells me Phoenix is going to be able to grab another road victory, even though they've struggled being away from home. Our last game on the hardwood is one of the most even games you will ever see. The matchup predictor, 49.8% compared to 50.2%. The Los Angeles Sparks are 15-17 on the year, 9-7 on the road. Meanwhile, the Washington Mystics are 14-18 on the year, 9-7 at home. This game is on ESPN 3 on Sunday at 3 p.m. from the Care First Arena in just outside Washington, D.C. The Sparks won game 1, 99-80. They won game 2, 93-86. The Sparks are 7-3 in their last 10. The Mystics are 3-7. in their last 10. They're both on one-game losing streaks, but the Sparks are 3-2 in their last 5 games. The Mystics are 1-4 in those last 5. The Mystics do have a 50.2% chance of winning this game, although they are dealing with the injuries of Shakira Austin, J.C. Sheldon, and Georgia Amore. Amore out for the season. Sheldon and Austin expected to be back for this game, but only time will tell. I don't really like how even this game is, but that's the great thing about it is it's a 50-50 coin flip. I could be wrong. I could be right. We're going to find out. I'm going with trends. I'm going with healthiness. I'm going with the Los Angeles Sparks because things just seem to be on their side with this. That's going to get us into our last pick of the weekend. We're stepping into the octagon once again. UFC 319 going down this weekend at the United Center in Chicago, Illinois. The early prelims, ESPN Plus, Disney Plus at 6 p.m. The prelims, ESPN Plus, and Disney Plus at 8 p.m. And that main card is a PPV at 10 p.m. Dricus Duplessis will be taking on Khamzat Chimaev. Duplessis is from South Africa. Chimaev from the United Arab Emirates. 6'1", 185 pounds, 31 years old, 76 inches on the reach, a switch fighter that lands his significant strikes 50.60% of the time is Duplessis. 6'2", 186 pounds, 31 years old, 75 inches on the reach, an orthodox fighter that lands his significant strikes 87% of the time is Chimaev. If you think I'm not going with Chimaev, who's a -250 favorite on this card, you are crazy. That's going to give me the links to Smarks, the Mercury, Chimaev, the Tigers, and the Dream. Enjoy your weekend as high school sports, NFL, and college are going to be back in the very near future. So it's nothing but fun from here. It's been another episode of Mitten Madness. We'll be back next week on 95.3 WBCK.
Join Da'Jzon Hughes every Saturday morning at 10 a.m. for Mitten Madness on 95.3 WBCK. Miss the show or want to run it back? Stream Mitten Madness on demand on the WBCK app. Sponsored by AirwayCashforJunkCars.com.